Good afternoon. You have joined the U.S. Chemical Safety and Hazard Investigation Boards for the CSB's public business meeting. We will now begin this meeting with Steve Owens, the chairperson of the CSB.
Well, thank you, Brian, and hello to everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Steve Owens, as Brian said. I'm the chairperson of the Chemical Safety Board, and we've been very busy since our last public meeting in April. Since that time, we've closed and issued reports for 5 more investigations, meaning that we've issued a total of 6 reports since the beginning of this calendar year. Even more, it also means that in the last 12 months, since July of last year, we've now closed and issued final reports for 12 investigations. That's the largest number of reports that the CSB has ever issued in a 12-month period. And for those of you who think in terms of fiscal years, this also means that we've issued 10 reports so far during fiscal year 23, with a couple of months still to go in the fiscal year. This is also the largest number of reports ever issued by the CSB during a single fiscal year. As you may recall, when I became the interim executive of the CSB last July, this agency had an enormous backlog of 17 investigations for which reports had not been issued. With the 12 reports we've now issued during the last 12 months, we've cut the backlog by more than 2/3. And we're on track to close and issue reports for the remaining 5 investigations by the end of this calendar year, meaning that we will have completely eliminated the backlog. A list of all the reports we've issued during the last 12 months is posted on the CSB website, along with our updated plan for issuing the 5 remaining reports. Reducing the backlog so significantly as we've done has taken an extraordinary effort by every single employee at the CSB, working together as a team. The dedicated career staff of the CSB are deeply committed to the agency's mission, and they are focused on moving the CSB forward. In addition to making such significant progress toward eliminating the investigation backlog, we've also been filling long open vacancies in key positions at the CSB. So far, during this fiscal year, we've hired 5 new chemical incident investigators and 2 new recommendation specialists. We've also hired a new chief information officer and new deputy CIO to address the many cybersecurity and IT infrastructure problems that have plagued this agency for years. And we filled vacancies in our contracting and financial operations staff. Before we filled these vacancies, the CSB had been in its lowest staff level since 2001, more than 20 years ago. Since last July, the CSB also has released 5 new safety videos, which to date collectively have been viewed over 4.5 million times. Our video in the 2019 massive fire and explosion at the Philadelphia Energy Solutions refinery received 1 million views in just the first week after its release, more than any other CSB video has ever received in such a short time. And our video on the huge 2019 explosions and fires at the TPC chemical plant already has received over 780,000 views since it was released just last week. We've also continued to increase the CSB's outreach and advocacy efforts and made more information available to the public, including continuing to post updated data on chemical incidents reported to the CSB under our accidental release reporting rule. As of this week, the data we've received in the 3 years that the rule has been in effect covers 290 chemical incidents that resulted in fatalities at 45 facilities, serious injuries at 156 facilities, and substantial property damage at 138 facilities nationwide. During just this fiscal year alone, since last October 1st, we've received reports covering 100 incidents that resulted in fatalities at 15 facilities, serious injuries at 42 facilities, and substantial property damage at 61 facilities nationwide. And as I mentioned, we still have 2 more months to go in this fiscal year. While the CSB clearly cannot conduct on-site investigations for all these events, the CSB must begin to deploy more often in order to protect communities, workers, and the environment from chemical disasters. That's why it's been so critically important for us to rebuild and revitalize the CSB by reducing the longstanding report backlog and filling the many vacancies at the agency, including particularly restoring the number of investigation staff to the level where they once were. It's also why the CSB needs to continue to receive adequate funding. This agency has long enjoyed strong bipartisan support from Congress, and we're hopeful that we'll continue to receive that support again this year. So during today's meeting, we'll hear presentations from CSB staff on a variety of topics, including presentations on the 5 reports we've issued since last April. We'll also show you the animation from our TPC video. But before I turn the floor over to my fellow board members, I just want to address one bit of housekeeping as we've done in previous meetings. At the end of today's presentations, we'll be providing an opportunity for public comments. And in the interest of time, we ask that you please keep your comments to just 3 minutes. And please use the icon on your computer screen to raise your hand so that you can be recognized to speak. If you'd prefer to submit written comments instead of speaking, you can send them to our email address, which is public@csb.gov. That's public, PUBLIC, @csb.gov. Now I'd like to turn this over to board member Sylvia Johnson for her remarks, and then to board member Kathy Sandoval. So Sylvia, please go ahead, and then Kathy, please begin when Sylvia's concluded. Thank you all very much for being here.
Thank you, Steve, and thank you all for joining us today. As we convene this meeting today, I'm here with a sense of pride and accomplishment and excited about the remarkable progress we've made together. As Steve said, in the past 12 months, our dedicated CSB team has worked tirelessly and helped the agency reach a significant milestone as we work to address the backlog. This achievement is a testament to the unwavering commitment and exceptional capabilities of our talented team. I'd like to extend a warm welcome to our new team members who have joined us, adding to our collective strength. Our accomplishments over the last 12 months have surpassed expectations and defied skeptics who doubted the feasibility of achieving so much in such a short span of time. Through the guidance of Chairperson Steve Owens, whose leadership has been instrumental in rebuilding the CSB, we fostered an environment that thrives on optimism, energy, and vision. The conditions you've created, Steve, have been pivotal in propelling our success, and you are to be commended for that. Stakeholders from a diverse set of backgrounds, including labor groups, non-government organizations, and industry representatives alike, have expressed their gratitude and support for our agency's renewed focus on our mission. Our reports have been heralded for providing essential lessons and insights, becoming indispensable resources for industries that seek to enhance safety practices. This outpouring of support speaks to the fact that the CSB is indeed moving in the right direction. Along with our ongoing efforts, I've personally dedicated attention to family engagement and outreach. Last month, I traveled to Oregon, Ohio, accompanied by some of our talented investigations team members. And on that trip, I had the opportunity to meet with the grieving families of Max and Ben Morrissey, 2 brothers who tragically lost their lives last fall at the BP Husky refinery. Our visit was profound and deeply moving, reminding me of the real impact of our work and how it has an impact on families and communities. Their sorrow and resilience have served as a powerful reminder of the responsibility we all bear to ensure that the lives of workers are safeguarded and that the devastating consequences of workplace incidents are minimized. Their stories have reaffirmed my own commitment to effecting lasting change and protecting the lives and livelihood of workers in their communities. In that room, I sat across from parents who were grappling with the unimaginable loss of not 1, but 2 sons. Beside them, a sister mourned the tragic passing of her 2 brothers. The pain etched on their faces was raw and profound, reflecting the deep void left by their loved ones. Equally as heart-wrenching, the wives of those 2 fallen brothers were present, and one had just given birth to a baby girl, an innocent life destined to grow up without ever knowing her father's embrace. Amidst the anguish, a grieving brother-in-law who also works at BP shared his sorrow with his wife by his side, both united in their sadness and longing for answers. Their stories pierced my heart, and I could feel their pain. The weight of their loss was overwhelming, and I knew that my own sadness could never begin to compare to the depths of their suffering. Their lives have been forever altered, and the void left by their loved ones will be felt for years and years to come. In that somber gathering, I also found an unwavering resolve to continue doing my part to change and improve workplace safety. I think we all left that room with a profound sense of responsibility knowing that we must do everything within our power to prevent such tragedies from happening to other workers and their families. Today, I implore every one of you to take heed to these stories and to recognize the continued need for comprehensive practices and policies to safeguard and protect workers. We cannot let these lives be lost in vain. The pain and devastation witnessed in Ohio demands that we create a safer work environment for all workers. I also want to take a moment to commend Steve Kleiss for his leadership, as well as two of our investigators, Bill Steiner and Melinda Hartz, for taking on the difficult task of sharing with the families what we know so far about what happened and sharing that information with such compassion and care. As we gather here today, we take pride in our achievements, but we also acknowledge the challenges that lie ahead. We have to remain steadfast in our pursuit of answers and unwavering in our dedication to our mission. Together, let us continue to work collaboratively, harnessing the strength of our collective efforts, the wisdom of our stakeholders, and the guidance of this great team to propel the CSB forward. It is my hope that as we move forward with a sense of urgency, determination, passion, and unity, knowing that every step we take brings us closer to a safer, more secure future for all workers and their families. Thank you for your attention. And with that, I will turn it to my colleague, Kathy Sandoval.
Thank you so much, Board Member Johnson. And thank you as well to Board Member and CEO Steve Owens for your leadership for this organization. I wanted to underscore some of the comments of Board Member Johnson in that as our presentations today will discuss, most of the investigations that we will discuss today involved worker fatalities and injuries. And in one of these incidents, a member of the public was also killed in their own home. Hundreds of homes in the nearby area were damaged in one incident. Shelters in place were issued in several incidents, and hundreds of millions of dollars in damage to industrial facilities were caused by these incidents. The CSB investigates the root causes and does analysis and provides recommendation to prevent such incidents. And the human toll underscores the imperative and the responsibility of our work. We seek to work together with the community to protect workers, to protect the community, and to protect the environment. And doing so also protects the nation's industrial capacity and indeed our economic and job opportunities. So first of all, my deepest condolences to the workers, to the families, to the communities of the people who were injured in these incidents. We seek through our work to prevent such incidents from happening again and can only express our deepest sympathies as we do this work. And many thanks to the dedicated staff of the CSB. You have accomplished this analysis at a pace that has never been seen before at the CSB, and your work will save lives. It already has saved lives around the world. Indeed, your influence is great. So it's been really a privilege to be part of this team. As Sylvia said, we are also delighted to welcome new members of the team. And thanks to all of the people at the CSB who have worked hard to hire and to bring on and to mentor and welcome new members of the team, as we also increase our training and capacity for our existing members to build our expertise to help promote safety. So thank you all very much. And again, our condolences to the families and communities affected by these terrible incidents. Thank you.
Well, and thank you, Sylvia, and thank you, Kathy, for those terrific remarks. And now we'll move ahead with our presentations today. First, we're going to turn it over to Steve Kleiss, who's the Executive Director of Investigations and Recommendations at the CSB. And then he will introduce several of the investigators who have worked on the reports that we completed since our April meeting, and they will each in turn give presentations about those reports. So Steve, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Steve. This afternoon, I will share with everyone some of the most significant accomplishments that we have been able to achieve during the past 3 months since the last public business meeting within the Office of Investigations and Recommendations. We have been moving aggressively to implement the agency's human capital plan, and as the chairperson mentioned, we have hired several investigators this calendar year. We're also in the process of finalizing our most recent recruitment action to bring on additional chemical incident investigators to increase the agency's investigative capacity. This is very important for us in order to address the issues that take place in the chemical industry throughout the United States and be able to provide our stakeholder groups with information that they can use to advance safety within their organizations and better understand the facts, circumstances, and conditions of the incident so that they too can make changes within their facilities. I'll start off with a summary of the most significant changes that have taken place within the Office of Recommendations. Recommendations are perhaps one of the most important tools that we have at the CSB to advance chemical safety. And in this beginning since this fiscal year, we have been able to successfully close 22 recommendations. The chairperson mentioned we have successfully closed 5 investigations, and since the last business meeting, but year to date 10 investigations, and we have issued a total of 85 new recommendations to various groups, owner operators, and other organizations, including other federal agencies, to provide opportunities for improvement in safety. The ability to have these recommendations addressed by the stakeholder groups, again, is critical to the agency's success to advance safety, our core mission. But now I'll move into the next part of the presentation that will provide everyone with the understanding of the unique facts and circumstances, key learnings from the 5 investigations that we've closed most recently. A common theme that runs through these investigations and the findings is consistent with the idea of understanding and addressing operational risk. And you'll see from the presentations this afternoon where there were opportunities to understand the risk through process hazard analysis and other methodologies. But unfortunately, we'll be sharing some outcomes where it was not adequately addressed. So we hope that the learning from these 5 investigations will enable other owner operators to raise their level of safety within their organizations to prevent these reoccurrences from happening again. We'll begin with a presentation from Butch Griffin on the Lyondell-Bazell incident that took place in January of 2020 in their LaPorte, Texas facility. So Butch, if you'd like to proceed with the presentation, please.
Yeah, thank you, Executive Director Kleist. I will be discussing briefly the fatal release of acetic acid and methyl iodide mixture at the Lyondell-Bazell LaPorte complex. Next slide, please. On July 27th, 2021, 3 contract workers employed by Turn 2 specialty companies at the Lyondell-Bazell LaPorte complex in LaPorte, Texas, were working to remove an actuator from a plug valve in the site's acetic acid unit. The actuator was being removed so that the valve could be used as an energy isolation device for a pipe spool repair job. The workers, however, inadvertently removed pressure retaining components of the valve while attempting to remove the actuator, and the pressure ejected the plug from the valve body. Approximately 164,000 pounds of acetic acid mixture erupted from the open equipment, and all 3 contract workers were sprayed with the releasing acetic acid mixture. 2 of these workers were fatally injured by chemical burns and toxic inhalation injuries from exposure to acetic acid and methyl iodide. Additionally, the third Turn 2 worker and a LyondellBasell responder were seriously injured. LyondellBasell transported 29 other personnel to medical facilities for further evaluation and treatment. LyondellBasell's property damage resulting from the incident, including loss of use, was estimated to be $40 million. The CSB's investigation identified 2 safety issues, including valve design to prevent human error and providing workers with conditions, procedures, and training to safely conduct work. The first safety issue is valve design to prevent human error. There have been at least 5 incidents, including this one, in which chemical industry workers inadvertently removed pressure retaining components from a plug valve installed in pressurized service while attempting to remove an actuator, all of which resulted in fatalities or serious injuries. The CSB notes that the design of the plug valve involved in the LyondellBasell incident was of a newer design recommended by the American Petroleum Institute that would allow an actuator to be mounted or removed without affecting the pressure retention of the valve. This newer design, however, did not prevent workers from inadvertently removing pressure retaining components while removing the actuator. The recurrence of incidents in which workers have inadvertently removed pressure retaining components from plug valves points to the need to further redesign these valves such that it would be difficult to remove pressure retaining components from plug valves while attempting to remove actuating equipment. The second safety issue is providing workers with conditions, procedures, and training to safely conduct work. The CSB found that LyondellBasell and Turn 2 considered the actuator removal job to be a simple task, and that LyondellBasell did not provide the work crew with a procedure detailing how to remove the actuator. And LyondellBasell did not adequately assess the potential risk of exposing the contract crew to hazardous chemicals during the actuator removal in light of historical incidents in the industry in which workers have inadvertently removed pressure retaining components from plug valves installed in pressurized service. The CSB has issued 6 recommendations as a result of this investigation. To the LyondellBasell LaPorte complex, the CSB recommends that 1, policy documents are updated to require development of procedures for properly removing actuators from plug valves, and 2, policy documents are updated to require verification of contractor qualifications and provide oversight where needed. To Turn 2 specialty companies, the CSB recommends that Turn 2 update its policies to require procedures and training are provided to safely conduct work on process equipment. To the American Society of Mechanical Engineers, the CSB recommends that ASME revise its B16.34 to require plug valves to be designed consistent with prevention through design principles to prevent inadvertent removal of pressure retaining components when removing actuating equipment. And to the American Petroleum Institute, the CSB recommends that API revise its standard 599 to require plug valves, again, be designed consistent with prevention through design principles to prevent inadvertent removal of pressure retaining components when removing actuating equipment. To the Valve Manufacturers Association of America, the CSB recommends that their technical committee work with ASME and API to ensure consistent methodology and good industry practices. And with that, Executive Director Kleist, I turn the presentation back to you.
Thank you, Butch, and thank you for your leadership in bringing this investigation to its successful conclusion. The next investigation that we'll be covering will be the release event that took place at the Wacker polysilicon facility involving the release of hydrogen chloride. Tyler Nelson is the IIC investigator in charge, that is, and he will make the presentation. So Tyler, if you begin, please.
Thank you, Steve. My name is Tyler Nelson. I'm a chemical incident investigator with the CSB. Today, I'll be providing a summary of the investigation of the Wacker polysilicon North American facility, whose report was published in June. On November 13th, 2020, a graphite heat exchanger cracked during maintenance activities, releasing gaseous hydrogen chloride, or HCl, at the Wacker polysilicon North American facility in Charleston, Tennessee. The incident occurred on the 5th floor of an equipment access structure when a contractor pipe fitter over-tightened flange bolts on a heat exchanger outlet pipe containing HCl, causing the pipe to crack and release HCl. At the time of the incident, 7 workers from 2 contract firms were present on the 5th floor platform, which was equipped with a single staircase for access and egress. 3 of the workers from Jake Marshall, tasked with bolt torquing, wore full-body chemical-resistant suits. The 4 other workers from Penn Gulf were tasked with insulating equipment and wore only standard flame-resistant clothing. The location of the release and the workers' inability to clearly see their surroundings in the white cloud created by the releasing HCl prevented all the workers from being able to access the staircase to exit the platform. To escape from the HCl release, 3 of the contract workers who were not wearing full-body chemical-resistant suits began climbing down the piping on the outside of the structure, located approximately 70 feet from the ground. While attempting to climb down, all 3 workers fell to the ground. 1 worker was fatally injured from the fall, and the other 2 sustained serious injuries. After the release stopped, the 4 workers still remaining on the 5th floor platform used a staircase to evacuate the area and reach the ground. Our investigation identified 4 safety issues: written procedures, control of hazardous energy, simultaneous operations, and means of egress. The first safety issue is written procedures. Wacker tasked contractor pipe fitters with torquing flange bolts on a live piping segment equipped with multiple bolts with differing torque requirements. The piping segment was connected to a graphite heat exchanger whose manufacturer specified a lower bolt torque requirement than the rest of the piping segment connections. Wacker did not have a written procedure to execute the torquing task and instead relied on the piping manufacturer's equipment manual to communicate the torque requirements to contractors. The manual, however, did not include the torque requirements for the bolts that were over-torqued. The resulting lack of clarity of the differing torque requirements led to the inadvertent over-torquing of the flange bolts on live operating equipment, the equipment fracture, and the release of HCl. The second safety issue is control of hazardous energy. Wacker did not treat operations on equipment containing hazardous chemicals as an activity that required isolation of hazardous energy, since it did not involve the intentional opening of a line. As such, Wacker did not perform a risk analysis to determine whether the torque task could be performed safely on operating equipment, nor did it implement precautions to mitigate the risk of torquing bolts on operating equipment prior to issuing a safe work permit to the pipe fitters, which could have restricted the insulators from being present in the area and prevented their harm. The third safety issue is simultaneous operations, or SIMOPS. When the incident occurred, 4 workers from a separate contractor company, Penn Gulf, were performing an unrelated pipe insulation task on the structure as permitted by Wacker, and they were present on the 5th floor platform near the pipe fitter work crew. Wacker did not have a policy or procedure for evaluating SIMOPS, a situation in which 2 or more operations occur together at a time and place. In addition, there's a general lack of industry and regulatory guidance on SIMOPS considerations available to companies such as Wacker. As a result, Wacker did not evaluate the risks associated with simultaneous work tasks, and the contract workers not involved in the torquing tasks were unnecessarily exposed to the HCl release. The final safety issue is means of egress. During the incident, 7 workers were present on the 5th floor platform, which was equipped with only a single point of egress. Wacker designed the equipment access structure with a single point of egress based on building code requirements for an unoccupiable equipment platform. The CSB found that current building code requirements do not provide for sufficient means of egress guidance from elevated work platforms used for accessing equipment containing hazardous materials. Additionally, 3 months before the incident, during a process hazard analysis, Vacher employees identified the need for a second point of egress, but Vacher did not take any action to address this recommendation before the incident. The CSB has issued 10 recommendations as a result of this investigation to Vacher Polysilicon, to the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, or OSHA, to Tennessee OSHA, to the Center for Chemical Process Safety, or CCPS, the International Code Council, ICC, and the National Fire Protection Association, NFPA. The CSB recommends that Vacher Polysilicon develop detailed maintenance procedures for torquing activities, which include an engineering and risk analysis for a given task. That they develop policy requirements to ensure that torquing activities performed on equipment containing hazardous energy are performed safely, such as through de-inventorying equipment or restriction of non-essential personnel, and ensuring that essential workers wear proper personal protective equipment. That they develop and implement a formalized SIMOPS program, and that they install additional means of egress for the tower platform and other multi-floor equipment structures on site. The CSB recommends to CCPS to develop and publish a safety product on safe work practices, including detailed and practical guidelines for evaluating SIMOPS. The CSB recommends that OSHA promulgate a standard requiring employers to ensure the coordination of SIMOPS involving multiple work groups, including contractors. The CSB also issued this recommendation to Tennessee OSHA. Also to OSHA, the CSB recommends that OSHA develop a safety product providing guidance on the coordination of SIMOPS involving multiple work groups, including contractors, that is not limited to confined space or construction. The CSB recommends that ICC amend the International Building Code to address conditions that may require multiple means of egress from elevated equipment platforms used for accessing equipment containing materials that pose physical and health hazards. And to NFPA, the CSB recommends to revise NFPA standards to address conditions which may require multiple means of egress from elevated industrial structures containing hazardous materials posing physical and health hazards, regardless of their combustibility, burn rate, or likelihood of explosion. Thank you.
Thank you, Tyler, for that presentation. And it's important to note this is not only Tyler's first investigation while serving as an investigator in charge, it is also his first investigation at the Chemical Safety Board, as he had joined us in November of last year. So we appreciate his professionalism and the experience that he brings to the agency in assisting us in accomplishing our core mission. So thank you, Tyler, for that. And also for the members of your team that helped bring this to its conclusion. The next presentation is on the Watson grinding and manufacturing investigation that took place. This incident took place in January of 2001 in Houston, Texas. Ben Schrader is the investigator in charge, and he will do this presentation this afternoon. So Ben, please proceed.
Thank you very much. Again, like Executive Director Kleiss was saying, this has a fatal propylene release resulting in an explosion at the Watson Grinding Facility in Houston, Texas. Watson Grinding was a small metalworking facility in the northwest part of Houston, Texas. The incident occurred on January 24th, 2020, approximately 4:24 a.m. that morning. 2 employees and a nearby resident were fatally injured, as well as property damage from a number of nearby structures. Again, like Board Member Sandoval mentioned earlier, not only were 2 employees that were there at the time were fatally injured, a nearby member of the public also passed away a couple weeks later from injuries sustained. In addition, there were 2 reported injuries from employees, and then the surrounding neighborhood it was also severely impacted, primarily by residences and small businesses experiencing damage. The cause of the incident was a propylene release due to a degraded, crimped rubber welding hose in one of the booths that they had at the Watson grinding facility. It was a propylene release. It was the propylene valve open, or this thing pulled away. This piping pulled away in the middle of the night. Since a manual shutoff was not closed at the end of the workday, nor was an automated gas detection system functional at the time, the propylene started to accumulate into dangerous quantities into one of the buildings there at Watson Grinding. The ignition source was most likely from an employee entering the building to start up operations that morning and turning on the lights. And there were two contributing causes to the incident. One was a lack of a comprehensive process safety management program, and second is a lack of an effective emergency response plan. A process safety management program. Next slide, please. Has a number of factors, and there were and a lot of these were missing at the Watson grinding facility. The first is they were not required by regulation to have a process safety management program. They did not apply to this requirement did not apply due to either the OSHA's PSM standard nor EPA's RMP rule. Second is they were missing key safety information in order to be able to understand how their facility was set up. They did not do an analysis of their process hazards that were there at the plant, again, with the possibility of accumulation of propylene inside one of the facilities. They did management of change as another part of regular process safety management. Initially, they had a copper tube in place. They replaced that at some point with a rubber welding hose. And the rubber welding hose at the time of the incident was a grade R, which was not recommended for propylene service. There was mechanical integrity or maintenance was found to be substandard, as well as missing operating procedures. The second safety issue or contributing cause was emergency preparedness. They did have an emergency response plan, however, it did not address the what would happen in the response for employees in the event of a propylene gas leak. And so that not only the employees that were directly touching the propylene, but all the other employees there at the plant. Not only did they not train them how to respond to a gas leak, as far as the potential for a gas leak as well. Lastly, worker response to propylene release or suspected propylene release should have included evacuating the area to a safe location, preventing other workers from entering the area, and in this case, also contacting emergency responders for help. Not as a result of this incident, but however, there was another incident that occurred approximately 7 years ago at a facility in Florida. In this case, there was a release of nitrous oxide, which is another industrial gas. And one of CSB's investigation recommendations at that time was to an industry organization called the Compressed Gas Association. And the recommendation was to develop a program for nitrous oxide manufacturers to evaluate the hazards and to incorporate key elements of the CCPSs, which is a chemical organization as far as guidelines for risk-based issues. And as a result of the recommendation from the CSB, the CGA, Compressed Gas Association, developed their own set of guidelines called CGA P86 in 2020. This was released approximately 4 months after the incident at Watson Grinding. But this was, and it did not only include the nitrous oxide that was part of the CSB's recommendation, they also included other industrial gases, industrial process gases that within the industry. So as a result of the incident, there were two recommendations the CSB made. The first was to the Compressed Gas Association, the CGA. And this had to do with not only were the member companies who typically are gas suppliers, but also for them to urge their member companies to also incorporate these programs as well, to have safer plants throughout the nation. And then specifically on the gas supplier, Matheson Trigas of the propylene, we also asked them to make available key safety information to their customers and explain to them why it's so important that they do include these key really important factors in moving forward with process safety management system. So those two recommendations, we only had two for this incident. That pretty much concludes my presentation, and I will turn the microphone back to Executive Director Kleist.
Thank you, Ben, and thank you for your work and again bringing this to its successful conclusion. While this is not Ben's first investigation, this was the first investigation where he served as an investigator in charge, leading this team to bringing this investigation to closure. So Ben, thank you for your work as the investigator in charge. The next incident we're going to cover this afternoon will be the fatal decomposition and reaction event that took place at the Optima Bell facility in Bell, West Virginia. Vanzella Vincent is the investigator in charge, and she will make the presentation this afternoon. So Vanzella, please proceed.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Executive Director Kleist. I will now provide an overview of the fatal chemical decomposition reaction and explosion at Optima Bell. On December 8th, 2020, Optima Bell in Bell, West Virginia, was performing a trial sodium dichloroisomeric dihydrate dehydration batch in a rotary metal dryer on behalf of Clearon Corporation through a contractual agreement with outsourcing partner Richmond Chemical. The sodium dichloroisomeric dihydrate, trade name CDB 56, underwent an unexpected decomposition reaction. During the dehydration or heating process, releasing gases to the point that the dryer's internal pressure exceeded its design pressure. The dryer ultimately exploded, causing a subsequent fire and toxic chlorine release, resulting in a shelter in place for over 4 hours, significant property damage to the facility, and metal fragments and debris scattered on and off site, almost a half-mile away. Optima Bell's estimated property damage for the incident is over $33 million. There was 1 fatality, 2 evaluated for respiratory irritation, and 1 reported community injury. The investigation team identified 5 safety issues in this investigation. The first is process knowledge management. Effective risk management hinges upon a thorough understanding and documentation of the process and chemical hazards. Clearon Corp lacked effective process knowledge management systems, and as a result, the technology package that it delivered to Optima Bell as part of the tolling arrangement did not contain adequate information to develop a robust and safe dehydration process. Nor did it provide sufficient hazard information regarding the circumstances that could lead to a hazardous decomposition of the CDB 56. Clearon Corporation lacked effective policies and procedures to ensure its employees had critical knowledge to ensure it submitted sufficient information to its tolling partners. Optima Bell mistakenly arrived at the conclusion that CDB 56 decomposition as a result of overheating was not a credible scenario, since this dryer could only reach a temperature of 130 degrees C. The second safety issue is thermal hazard assessment. None of the parties involved in the tolling operation effectively assessed the hazards of the CDB 56, nor the dehydration operation. Various publicly available screening tools exist to predict reactive or thermal hazards, including lab or experimental methods and mathematical or tabular methods. In summary, Optima Bell failed to locate publicly available information on the decomposition of sodium dichloroarsenic dihydrate, locate or use any of the publicly available thermal hazard screening methods, request additional information from Clearon, or identify sodium dichloroarsenic dihydrate decomposition at temperatures lower than the 200 degrees C that had been discussed in its PHA. The third safety issue is the tolling of hazardous materials. Companies often augment in-house production by outsourcing chemical processes and other operations called tolling contracts or agreements. The Center for Process Safety provides industry guidance for safe and effective tolling relationships. Neither party involved followed these guidance. The dryer explosion might have been prevented had Clearon Corporation or Optima Bell applied the suggested industry guidance. The fourth safety issue is equipment selection and design. Optima Bell used its existing production equipment for the CDB 56 dehydration, but it was not designed, sized, or re-engineered for the dehydration. As a result, the equipment was not designed to quickly cool the dryer contents or to relieve the excess pressure generated during the decomposition reaction. Nor was a sodium dichloroarsenic dihydrate decomposition reaction scenario considered. In addition, Clearon and Optima Bell experimented with a new method for the CDB 56 dehydration at full production scale, involving over 8,000 pounds of the material, without first conducting bench or pilot scale trials, resulting in a catastrophic explosion. Had scaled studies been conducted, Optima Bell, Clearon Corporation, or Richmond Chemical likely would have gained additional thermal stability data, reactivity information, and process knowledge, which might have led to changes in the process and potentially prevented the decomposition reaction and the explosion. The fifth and final safety issue is regulatory coverage of reactive hazards. CDB 56 and anhydrous sodium dichloroarsenic can undergo self-accelerating decompositions when heated. These reactions may lead to explosions, fires, and toxic emissions, severely impacting people, property, and the environment. Yet, many such reactive chemicals are not regulated under OSHA's Process Safety Management Standard or the EPA's Risk Management Program rule. Had sodium dichloroarsenic dihydrate been covered under these regulations, Optima Bell would have been required to implement risk mitigation and management systems that could have prevented this incident. This 2020 automobile incident is similar to other incidents involving reactive chemicals not regulated under the PSM standard or RMP rule, including the 1995 NAP Technologies explosion and fire incident in Lodi, New Jersey, also involving a tolling operation. Lastly, the Chemical Safety Board issued a reactive hazard study in 2002, including recommendations to OSHA and the EPA to improve reactive chemicals coverage. Neither has, and each has open recommendations. The Chemical Safety Board has investigated nearly a dozen other incidents involving non-PSM covered reactive chemicals since September of 2002. The Chemical Safety Board has issued a combined total of 15 recommendations to Optimum Bell, Clearon Corporation, Richmond Chemical, the National Institutes of Health, the Center for Chemical Process Safety, Occupational Safety and Health Administration, OSHA, and the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, as a result of this investigation to prevent future incidents. The Chemical Safety Board issued Optima Bell 4 recommendations to improve its internal process safety systems associated with understanding, evaluating, and managing thermal and reactive hazards, tolling operations and equipment selection, developing tolling agreements, and implementing systems to ensure that processes are safe. To Richmond Chemical, 1 recommendation to develop and implement a program for the development of toll manufacturing agreements was issued. The Chemical Safety Board also issued 4 recommendations to Clearon Corporation. 1, develop and implement a comprehensive process knowledge management program for its employees and toll manufacturers. 2, update its CDB 56 safety data sheet to include additional safety hazards, including maximum storage temperature and self-accelerating decomposition. Number 3, develop and implement a program for tolling design and equipment selection for any new tolling operation. And 4, develop and implement a process safety management system consistent with industry guidance publications. The Chemical Safety Board recommended that the National Center for Biotechnology Information update the safety information in PubChem for sodium dichloroisonuric dihydrate to include reactivity and decomposition information. To the Center for Process Safety, the Chemical Safety Board recommended that it updates existing outsourced manufacturing guidelines or develop a new supplemental tolling guidance to include current best practices and guidance specific to tolling managing companies. To the EPA, the Chemical Safety Board recommended revising its accidental release prevention requirements to explicitly cover catastrophic reactive hazards that have the potential to seriously impact the public. And lastly, the Chemical Safety Board recommended that OSHA update its chemical reactivity hazards website to include reactivity assessment tools developed since the 2004 preliminary screening method, and to evaluate the additional resources page for necessary changes or updates. Following the update of the chemical reactivity hazards website, develop and implement a comprehensive outreach plan for the chemical industry and related trade associations to ensure they are aware. and amend the PSM standard to achieve more comprehensive control of reactive hazards that have catastrophic consequences. This concludes the Optima Bail overview. And now I turn the presentation back over to Executive Director Kleiss.
Well, thank you, Vanzella. And while this is not Vanzella's first investigation as an investigator in charge, I do wish to recognize her and thank her for her continued demonstration of professional excellence as she carried out the role as the investigator in charge. So thank you for the successful completion of this investigation. The next investigation we'll cover this afternoon will be focusing on the Intercontinental Terminal Company above ground storage tank incident that took place in March of 2019. Crystal Thomas is the investigator in charge, and she will be making the presentation this afternoon. Crystal, would you please proceed?
Yes, thank you, Executive Director Kleist. Next slide, please. Thank you. On Sunday, March 17th, 2019, a large fire erupted at the Intercontinental Terminals Company bulk liquid storage tank terminal in Deer Park, Texas. The fire originated in the vicinity of tank 80-8, which was an 80,000 barrel above ground atmospheric storage tank that held a blend of naphtha and butane product. Once the fire erupted, ITC was unable to stop or isolate the release of product from the tank. As a result, the fire burned, intensified, and spread to the 14 other tanks located in the common containment area. The fire burned for 3 days until it was extinguished on Wednesday, March 20th, 2019. The CSB determined that the cause of the incident was the release of a flammable butane-enriched naphtha vapor from the failed tank 80-8 circulation pump, which accumulated in the area and ignited, resulting in a fire. The fire caused substantial property damage at the ITC Deer Park terminal, including the destruction of 15 80,000 barrel above ground atmospheric storage tanks and their contents. The incident also significantly impacted the environment when a containment wall surrounding the tanks breached and an estimated 470 to 523,000 barrels of hydrocarbon and petrochemical products, firefighting foam, and contaminated water was released into Tucker Bayou. From there, the released materials flowed into Buffalo Bayou and were carried out to the Houston Ship Channel and surrounding waters. A 7-mile stretch of the Houston Ship Channel adjacent to the ITC Deer Park terminal was closed, as were several waterfront parks in Harris County and the city of LaPorte due to the contamination. The incident did not result in any injuries or fatalities. However, the local community experienced serious disruptions, including several shelter-in-place orders due to the benzene-related air quality concerns. A shelter-in-place was issued for the entire city of Deer Park at one point, and local schools and businesses either closed or operated under modified conditions. A portion of a major highway in the area was also closed. ITC estimated that property damage resulting from the loss of the tank farm exceeded $150 million. The CSB identified 5 safety issues as a result of its investigation. These safety issues include pump mechanical integrity, flammable gas detection systems, remotely operated emergency isolation valves, tank farm design, and OSHA, PSM, and EPA RMP applicability. The first safety issue is pump mechanical integrity. With regards to this safety issue, the CSB found that ITC did not have a formal mechanical integrity procedure in place that defined requirements for maintaining the mechanical integrity of tank 80-8 and its equipment, which included the tank circulation pump. A formal mechanical integrity program for pumps in highly hazard chemical service could have prevented this incident by providing ITC with additional opportunities to identify pump issues prior to the incident. The mechanical seal in the pump failed on March 17, 2019, allowing the butane-enriched naphtha product to release from the pump as the pump continued to operate. The second safety issue is flammable gas detection systems. The CSB found that tank 80-8 was not equipped with a flammable gas detection system to warn personnel of a hazardous atmosphere resulting from the loss of containment from the tank. In 2014, a hazard review team recommended the addition of a flammable gas detection system near tank 80-8. However, ITC did not implement this recommendation. In the absence of a flammable gas detection system, there were no alarms to alert personnel about the initial release of butane-enriched naphtha product. Consequently, the product continued to release from the failed tank 80-8 circulation pump for approximately 30 minutes, completely undetected before its flammable vapors eventually ignited. The third safety issue is remotely operated emergency isolation valves. The CSB also found that tank 80-8 and the other tanks located in the first and second 80s tank farm were not equipped with emergency operated emergency isolation valves designed to mitigate product releases remotely from a safe location. On the day of the incident, a large volume of butane-enriched naphtha product contained in tank 80-8 could not be remotely or automatically isolated. As a result, the product continued to release via the failed pump, further fueling the fire around tank 80-8. As the fire involving the tank intensified, flames spread to adjacent tanks and eventually compromised equipment in their piping manifolds, causing breaches in piping that allowed the hydrocarbon and petrochemical products contained in these tanks to release into the common containment area. The fourth safety issue is tank farm design. The CSB found that although the first and second 80s tank farm was designed largely in accordance with applicable NFPA 30 requirements, elements of the tank farm design, including tank spacing, subdivisions, engineering controls for pumps located inside a containment area, and drainage systems, made it difficult for emergency responders to slow or prevent the spread of the initial tank 80-8 fire, which allowed it to spread to other tanks in the tank farm. While NFPA 30 defines minimum requirements for tank farm design, additional industry guidance documents provide more robust tank farm design recommendations. While ITC was not required to implement additional industry guidance recommendations, many of which were developed after the construction of the tank farm, implementation of such recommendations could have prevented the escalation of this incident. The final safety issue involved applicability of the Occupational Safety and Health Administration's Process Safety Management, or PSM standard, and the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency's Risk Management Program, or RMP rule. ITC did not apply a formal process safety management program to tank 80-8 because neither the OSHA PSM standard nor the EPA RMP rule applied to the tank and its associated equipment. Tank 80-8 was not covered by the PSM standard due to the atmospheric storage tank exemption contained in the standard, and the RMP rule did not apply due to the flammability rating exemption in the rule for the butane-enriched naphtha mixture. Although ITC applied some process safety management elements across the terminal, the company did not apply other key elements, including mechanical integrity and process hazard analysis, to the atmospheric storage tanks and highly hazardous chemical service. Applying these elements would have provided the company with additional opportunities to identify and control hazards through multiple layers of protection. Had ITC developed and implemented a comprehensive process safety management program that effectively identified and controlled hazards for tank 80-8 and its associated equipment, this incident could have been prevented. The CSB made several recommendations as a result of its investigation. Recipients of these recommendations included the Intercontinental Terminals Company, or ITC, the American Petroleum Institute, or API, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, or OSHA, and the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, or EPA. The CSB recommended that ITC develop and implement a process safety management system for the ITC Deer Park Terminal that would be applicable to all atmospheric storage tanks and highly hazard chemical service and the tank's associated equipment. The CSB also recommended that ITC develop and implement a condition monitoring program for all pumps and highly hazard chemical service at the ITC Deer Park Terminal. Additionally, the CSB recommended that ITC install flammable gas detection systems with associated alarm functions and product storage and transfer areas at the terminal where flammable substance releases could occur. The CSB also recommended that ITC install remotely operated emergency isolation valves for all atmospheric storage tanks at the ITC Deer Park Terminal that contain highly hazardous chemicals or liquids with a flammability rating of NFPA 3 or higher. Lastly, the CSB recommended that ITC evaluate the design of all new and existing tank farms at the ITC Deer Park Terminal, including tank spacing, subdivisions, containment, drainage, and the potential inclusion of process equipment within the containment area to determine whether the associated engineering controls satisfy standards designed to prevent similar incidents from occurring. The CSB made one recommendation to the American Petroleum Institute, or API. The recommendation was to update API Standard 2610, which is the design, construction, operation, maintenance, and inspection of terminal and tank facilities, to include flammable gas detection systems. The CSB also made a recommendation to OSHA. That recommendation was to eliminate the atmospheric storage tank exemption from the PSM standard. Finally, the CSB made one recommendation to EPA. That recommendation to EPA was to expand coverage of its RMP rule to include all flammable liquids, including mixtures with an NFPA 3 flammability rating or higher. And this concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Crystal, for the presentation. And while Crystal has supported numerous investigations since joining the CSB, this is the first time she has served as the investigator in charge of an investigation. So, Crystal, thank you for your work in this particular investigation, and we appreciate you bringing this again to its successful conclusion. Full copies of the reports that we've described this afternoon can be found on the CSB's website, www.csb.gov, selecting the Investigations tab to find the full reports on these investigations. These 5 investigations underscore the importance of understanding and addressing operational risk, and we encourage all owner-operators to engage in robust process hazard analysis and properly control and mitigate these risks to prevent reoccurrences of the events that we saw here today. And before we move on to the next presentation, I do wish to thank the team within the Office of Investigations and Recommendations, but also to the balance of the CSB team, for which, without their help, we can't possibly complete the work that we do to provide the very good service that we do to the chemical community. So thank you to thanks to the entire agency, and thank you to everyone for the work that you do to support us. The next presentation will actually be the animation that was developed for the TPC investigation. That investigation was presented during our last public business meeting, but we have the animation that we wish to show you today. So if we can proceed with that, please.
TPC is a petrochemical manufacturing company with several facilities along the Gulf Coast of Texas and Louisiana. At the time of the incident, the company produced butadiene at its Port Neches plant. Butadiene is used as a building block in the production of a wide range of products, but is most commonly used to produce synthetic rubber. It is a highly reactive chemical, which if not properly managed, can lead to serious hazards. For instance, in the presence of oxygen, high-purity butadiene can undergo reactions to form a solid substance known as popcorn polymer. If popcorn polymer accumulates and grows inside process equipment, it can lead to very high pressure and ultimately cause the equipment to rupture. On August 4th, 2019, a worker performed a routine operation in TPC's butadiene unit. As part of that operation, the worker shut down a primary pump that was part of the butadiene production process. When the worker tried to restart the pump, it would not operate. The primary pump was sent for repair and remained out of service from that date forward. A spare pump was used to continue operations. The inoperable pump created a significant dead leg, which is an area of piping that is open to the process but does not have any material flowing through it. The CSB determined that over the next 114 days, popcorn polymer began to form and accumulate within the dead leg. But the CSB could not find evidence that anyone at TPC recognized the hazard created by the dead leg. At 12:54 a.m. on November 27th, excessive popcorn polymer buildup caused the dead leg piping to suddenly rupture. Approximately 6,000 gallons of liquid, primarily composed of butadiene, emptied through the ruptured piping in less than a minute. The liquid vaporized upon release to the atmosphere, forming a flammable cloud. 3 nearby workers were startled by the rupture. They immediately recognized the danger and quickly departed as the vapor cloud grew. In just 2 minutes, the flammable vapor cloud found an ignition source and exploded. The resulting pressure wave destroyed parts of the facility and injured 2 TPC employees and a security contractor. The blast damaged nearby homes and buildings and was reportedly felt up to 30 miles away. Local officials stated 5 residents reported minor injuries. At least 2 additional explosions occurred following the initial blast. Some of the piping damaged by those explosions could not be isolated. As a result, flammable process fluid continued to escape from ruptured equipment, and smaller contained fires burned for more than a month. At 10:09 a.m. on January 4th, 2020, the TPC Incident Command confirmed that all fires were finally out.
Well, that concludes the updates from the Office of Investigations, and we wish to recognize and thank Hillary Cohen and Shauna Lawhorn for their work in the production of these videos and working with the investigation teams to produce these very, very important messages to the chemical community. So Steve, I'll pass it back over to you.
Well, great. Thank you, Steve. And I want to thank Butch and Tyler and Ben and Bonzella and Crystal for their terrific work, as you had indicated, all these investigations and the reports that they and the teams that they worked with produced. I will say, for the benefit of our viewers, as Steve alluded and mentioned in several of his remarks, in most cases, if not all the cases, this has about been the first time that one of our investigators was a lead investigator, and in some cases also the first time that we've had a report brought to a conclusion under their supervision. And part of that is due because we had such an enormous backlog over the years. It took a fair amount of time over the years for that to accumulate. And many of our investigators are fairly new. Because there have been a lot of vacancies among investigative staff that have really grown in recent years. But because of the great work that Steve mentioned that were not only done by the folks on this call, but also the rest of the team at CSB and the Recommendations Investigations Unit, but also in our other offices, whether it's HR, finance, contracting, OGC, and animations, and others who have worked together as a team to not only bring these reports to fruition and produce the reports themselves, but to hire the new investigators and new recommendation staff that we've been able to bring on board during the last 12 months to add to the hands-on effort that we've been putting together to eliminate the backlog. We do have 12 reports under our belt now. We've got 5 more to go, which we're focused on getting done by the end of this calendar year. And once we do that and continue to add to our team at CSB, we hopefully will be able to begin to deploy to all the chemical incidents that are coming to our attention on a more frequent and regular basis. But for now, I again just want to echo Steve's comments and thank all the people at CSB for their terrific work, as well as our board members, Sylvia Johnson and Kathy Sandoval, for the terrific effort that they've made as well, and working with everyone to get all the work that we've been able to do done in such a short period of time. Now, since we've finished all that, we will turn our attention to our public comment section. As I mentioned previously, I'm asking everyone, if you're interested in making a comment, please use the icon on your computer to raise your hand so that Brian can identify you and recognize you. And also, if you can please keep your comments to 3 minutes. We will generally not be able to answer any complex questions or anything about specific reports or specific activities of the CSB. And if you have those kinds of questions, please send them to us by email, again, at our email address, which is public@csb.gov. And we'll try to respond as much as we can, or certainly be able to provide information if it's necessary on our website to address the kinds of questions we may get here today. So Brian, I'll turn it back over to you and let you begin to look for people whose hands are raised. But I also will say just very quickly, while we're waiting for people to raise their hands, we have now set the dates for our next round of public meetings for fiscal year 24, which begins in October of this year. A public notice will be published in the Federal Register very soon, if that's not already been published. But those dates are, for those of you who want to jot them down, on October 26th of this year, then January 25th of next year, April 25th of 2024 next year, and July 25th of 2024. Those are all Thursdays, and all of those meetings will begin at 2 p.m. Eastern time. Again, they'll be posted on our website and also published in the Federal Register. So Brian, take it away.
Steve, thank you. We have a hand raised. Manny, I'm going to ask you to go ahead and unmute.
And also, if you can please identify yourself and if you're with an organization, what that organization is. So thank you.
Manny, you have the floor.
Thank you. My name is Manny Ehrlich. I was one of the board members at the CSB from 2014 to 2019. Congratulations, Mr. Chairman, on the remarkable job in getting the backlog done. And to Sylvia and the other board members, it's really an incredible job. I listened with some real interest today about 3 of the incidents you talked about: the grinding incident, the isocyanurate, and the TPC incident, where had elements of either RMP or PSM been involved, they may have had different outcomes. And I've heard over the years when I was on the board and now even as a consultant, you know, the people say, well, that doesn't apply to us, so we're not going to implement it. But I'm wondering if it would be in the agency's best interest and for the chemical industry if CSB undertook the production of a document or a video to show over the years what the lack of PSM compliance with things like management of change and so forth, what that may have been able to do in terms of preventing damage and fatalities in the chemical industry.
Well, Manny, first of all, thank you for tuning in and participating in the call today. And also thank you for your service on the CSB. I thought that might be you on the call, but I didn't want to hazard a guess and it turned out not to be you, but I think the point you make is a very important one, and I won't comment specifically on that suggestion because I'm not supposed to say things that we haven't yet done on the CSB, but
Understood.
yeah, you've been there and done that, so you know that. But but I will say, part of what we talk about all the time, and I know you did as well when you were on the CSB, is what can we do in terms of other types of safety products that we can put out other than just investigative reports, whether it's a safety alert, a hazard study, or something else that can document the history of problems and how either recommendations that we've made, that this agency has made over its 25-year history could have helped prevent those incidents from occurring in the first place, and can help prevent them from reoccurring if they had been implemented, including things that we've recommended to EPA and OSHA as well as private industry. And it's something that in a broad sense is a very active topic of conversation within the board right now, in part because with fingers crossed, we will get the remaining backlog of reports completed by the end of this calendar year. We will be able to begin to deploy on-site to incidents on a more regular and frequent basis. And also we will have the capacity to do the kind of things that you were suggesting, Manny, which is to start looking at those different and new kinds of safety products, because we will have the people and hopefully, excuse me, hopefully the resources to do that. We'll have to see how the budget goes, but certainly now that we've been able to staff up here at the CSB, we have not as many as we need, but we certainly have more investigators and other team members on board to work on exactly those kinds of projects. So again, thank you. And thank you for everything you've done over the years, Manny, to improve safety.
And thank you, sir. Good luck.
Well, thank you.
Again, if you'd like to leave a comment, feel free to raise your hand. I can recognize and bring it to the floor. Steve Solomon.
Yes, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you loud and clear.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. I am Steve Solomon. I am the Director of Health, Safety, and Environment for the United Steelworkers out of the headquarters in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Two of the locations that you have talked about during this presentation today are steelworker represented. The BP oil refinery, now Cenovus in Oregon, Ohio, and the TPC chemical facility in Port Neches, Texas. And I just want to recognize the incredible work of this leadership, the board, the staff, and everyone that has come together to produce a product that not only brings attention to the hazards that's involved, but working towards eliminating and controlling them and making sure that systems are identified that needs to be improved, including the updating of a PSM standard that is currently in the rulemaking stages that is long overdue, and not just for petrochemical facilities, but for all facilities that needs PSM. So I want to recognize this leadership, specifically Steve and the board and all of the career staff and investigators that we work closely with, and under some of the most emotional, trying times that we have ever experienced. And Board Member Johnson, you are spot on about how difficult Oregon, Ohio has been. It's still raw. You can feel it in our members. You can feel it with the leadership of the local union. You can feel it with the families, and you can feel it with those that are still working in the facility and those who didn't want to return. This has been the most challenging fatality. All fatalities are challenging, but this one is unique. No one should ever have to have their lives stolen from them, and certainly two brothers and siblings should never have their lives taken from them either. And we cannot thank you enough for what is being done. And it's our hope that the lessons learned will prevent future tragedies so that no one else will have to go through this again. So appreciate it, and keep up the great work.
Hey, Steve, you're muted.
Oops, got the Zoom worms at play here, but I just wanted to say to Steve how much we've appreciated the relationship with him personally and the steelworkers overall. I know there's been a long history of relations and collaboration with USW on investigations, and especially on the types of things that he was just talking about, that with meetings with families over the years where there have been incidents where there have been not only tragic injuries suffered, but loss of life as well. And those are always very, very, very difficult. Over the last year, since July of 22, when I will say we reinitiated closer relationships with the USW, it certainly helped this agency to do our job better, to have clearer and more frequent lines of communication with USW, just as we have had over the years with industry. And what we have been trying to do over the last year is to be more involved on a personal level as board members with outreach to the communities, as Kathy was mentioning in her comments, and also when there are meetings with the families, as Sylvia and you mentioned, Steve, as well, to do whatever we can do to try to help address the concerns and the questions that they may have about not only what happened during the incident, but what we are doing as an agency to try to prevent something like that from happening again in the future. So again, we've really appreciated the support that you and the USW have given this agency over the years, and especially to myself and to Sylvia and Kathy now as board members. And Sylvia and Kathy, if you want to say anything, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Steve. And Steve Solomon, thank you for your words. And as Steve Owen said, this has definitely been a two-way street. Your USW members have been instrumental in helping our investigations team uncover the sequence of events that occurred at BP Synovus out in Oregon, Ohio. And I think I can say for all of us, we still feel the grief and all of the sorrow that the families are continuing to deal with each and every day. I think of them personally often, having been in a room with them, but please know that your work is very much appreciated. And I personally appreciate how you have reached out to us, and as Steve said, been supportive of the CSB as an agency. And so that is a relationship that we continue to value. And so I'm happy that we are back in communication with USW. And I think I can say that as long as I sit here, I want that relationship to continue. So thank you.
Thank you. And just wanted to echo the thanks. The work, the relationship with all of the stakeholders is really important, from workers to the community, also standard setting bodies, industry associations, state, local, federal government agencies, and other agencies has been really important. One of the things that was highlighted in one of the investigations was also that we looked where workers had made suggestions to improve safety, and the company hadn't acted upon that before the incident that the workers were afraid of occurred. So I think that, again, this is a lesson learned in the industry, is about listening to the people who are doing the work and looking to promptly engage in that, so that we can avoid tragedies. And also sometimes it takes a different imagination. So I'm thinking about the investigation that involved simultaneous operations in an area that was not classified as a room, but it was a regularly used maintenance platform. But there were things that could have been done in terms of both scheduling operations, providing information that was relevant to the workers, and making it accessible. And there are ways that we can do that through technology as well as better knowledge management. And by listening to and promptly acting upon worker concerns. So I think we really have a variety of opportunities to improve safety, as well as by looking at where are there safety gaps. And a number of our recommendations have also identified gaps that can be addressed. So we look forward to working with a wide range of communities to implement the recommendations. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, Kathy, and thank you, Sylvia, and thank you, Steve.
Currently don't have anyone in the queue. Again, if anyone wants to comment, please use the raise hand function and be glad to acknowledge.
I see one more there, Brian.
Yeah, Richard.
Yep.
Richard, you should be able to unmute if you'd like.
Okay, I've got it. Thank you. I have followed the work of the CSB for many years. I'm a consultant at this point. And one of the things that I'm curious about in terms of the future, I know you don't have, a full view of the future, but you seem to have a number of teams, like 3 different, for instance, supervisory investigators and then investigators under them. How do you intend to utilize teams like this going forward for future incidents? Any thoughts on that? Or is this something that's still under development?
Well, Richard, thank you for that comment and that question. I will, it's something that we've talked about publicly in other forums. I think I'm at liberty to talk about that as well here. But one of the things that certainly when Sylvia Johnson and I became board members in early 2022 focused on was the fact that there were so many vacancies, still are, vacancies at the CSB, and that in order to really do the job as Congress intended this agency to do when you created it back in 1990, is to hire more people and to begin to work together in teams. As I mentioned in my comments, when I became the interim executive in July of last year, we had 17 reports, 17 open investigations. We had far fewer investigators than 17 at the time, and which meant at that point that in some cases only one investigator was working on that incident and on that report. And to the extent that they could get help, it was a bit few and far between because everyone else was busy with their reports and they weren't just working on one. In some cases, they were working on more than one. And so investigation and trying to get a report done. So it was not a good situation, but through various things, including, to be quite frank, kind of cleaning out some of the bureaucracy, I'll call it that, that existed at the CSB, which in some cases was hindering the work of the investigators to get their job done. And by hiring more people and by putting more resources to the extent we were able into the work of our investigators, we've been able to do what we've talked about here. It was really a Herculean effort. I don't think anyone should underestimate the amount of effort that went into that. People working extraordinarily hard over the course of the last 12 months to get that done. But to go to your question, Richard, and more specifically, one of the reasons that we were able to do what we did, for example, in this calendar year, in terms of getting out 6 more reports, and as Steve Kleist indicated, and I mentioned, 10 reports in a single calendar year and 12 reports over the last 12 months, is that we were we were able to begin to work in teams, bit by bit, providing help to the investigators and then providing help to each other. And so now I won't say that's the norm, but that's certainly the goal. And for the remaining 5, we absolutely are working in teams of investigators. We have enough investigators in place. And then once we get those 5 reports completed by the end of this calendar year, we obviously will have the PP Ohio investigation to close out in the first part of next calendar year in 2024. We can begin to deploy again, and we'll need to be judicious about how we do that. We'll need to make sure that we do have those teams together so that no one investigator is carrying too much of the burden, and no one team is carrying too much of the burden, so that we can avoid a backlog from developing in the future. There's not an easy solution to all of this. It's really making sure that we as a board and our management staff at the agency are very much aware of the needs of the people who are doing the heavy lifting in this agency, not just the investigators, but the other team members who are, as Steve Kleist mentioned, working every day to make sure that this agency works smoothly and that the investigators have the resources they need. And our recommendation specialists have the ability to develop the kinds of recommendations in conjunction with the investigators that go into making these reports successful. So it's kind of a long-winded answer to a very simple question, but it's certainly something that we have spent a lot of time and energy not only focusing on over the last 12 months, but have been giving an awful lot of thought to as we move toward completely eliminating the backlog and then to begin to do the job that we're really here to do, which is to get out and investigate incidents as they occur, and to produce reports in a timely fashion. So thank you, Richard. So Brian, I think Manny's got
Thank
his
you.
hand up. I don't know if that's a new hand or the old hand that was up for Manny, but
It's a new hand.
New hand.
okay.
One point I'd like to make that I didn't make before. I'm still very active with the Ammonia Safety Training Institute and National Fire Protection Association, and I get into the field a fair amount. And without exception, the reports that are issued have outstanding acceptance by other trade associations and by industry. But more importantly, or not more importantly, but very much important, is the fact that everybody knows about the videos. And I've gotten nothing but fantastic feedback about the CSB videos ever since I was in the agency, and that really continues. And I think Shauna and Hillary have done an outstanding job in that domain. So I just wanted to throw that in there as well.
Well, Manny, thank you again. I know you guys did a lot of work when you were on the board in terms of developing the video program into what it is today. So we owe you all a deep debt of gratitude for that. I will say they are extraordinarily successful. It's been an interesting thing to watch it, not only as it's developed over the years, but since I've been on the board, and Sylvia and Kathy have been as well, to see how many times, as I mentioned in my opening comments, some of these videos are viewed. All of them get lots of views. Some get an awful lot of views. But what I didn't mention, which is equally important, is that we have sort of a regular viewing base out there as well of safety professionals who use these videos. And I know that Sylvia mentioned that, and Kathy alluded to it as well, who use it to educate their co-workers, or in some cases their team members, and in some of the agencies and their staff as well. And for folks who don't know about it, I will encourage people to go to our YouTube site. We have a YouTube site. If you just Google CSB YouTube, it'll pop up, and we have almost 300,000 subscribers to that site. And that's kind of unheard of for any YouTube site, but especially one for a government agency. It's extraordinary. I've been using that word a lot, but that's kind of what it is in terms of what's been going on here lately at the agency. And we certainly couldn't have done it without everyone's hard work to produce the reports. And then when a video is produced, it's led by Hillary Cohen and Shauna Lawhorn, but it's also a collaborative effort by almost everybody, if not everybody in the agency, to make sure that it's right, it's accurate, but also it's effective. There's a lot, as you know, Manny, there's a lot of vetting that goes on for those videos before they're made public and turned into final products. So, and I will say also, well, thank you, Manny. Also, just that I will stop talking, is that on the TPC, we displayed the what we call the animation from the TPC video. The actual video itself is longer, including statements by Butch Griffin, who was the investigator on that incident, and Sylvia Johnson, who was the board member who participated in that video. That's the one that does have over 780,000 views already in less than a week. And I would encourage people to go to our YouTube site and take a look at that video, because it is very informative, and hopefully it will help prevent an incident like that from reoccurring. So, and thank you, Manny.
Sure, thank you. I'm out of hands.
I don't see anyone else queued up. Chairperson, I give it another 30 seconds or 20 seconds or so if anyone would like to leave a comment. Again, use the raise your hand function. Be glad to recognize you. I am going to take the lack of hands raised that we've satisfied the opportunity for comments.
Okay, I had inadvertently muted myself again there. I was starting to talk and realized that I think that may be an omen that the computer keeps muting me and telling me to stop talking. But I was just going to thank everyone for tuning in and watching this meeting and participating. And those of you who made comments and asked questions, we really appreciate it as well, because it's very important for us that not only that we're able to disseminate the information that we provide on these calls, but also that we do get feedback, and that we are able, as Sylvia and Kathy both have said as well, to hear from everyone, whether it's stakeholders, members of the public, or whomever, about the work that we are doing, the issues we need to be addressing, and how well the information that and safety studies that we're putting out are working out there. And this is a collaborative and two-way street. It's not just us doing investigations and putting out reports and saying what we think. This is a very iterative process, and it's one where there are a lot of inputs into it in order to make sure that we get it right, and that we do produce effective reports as well as effective videos and other safety products. So again, thank everyone for tuning in, and we hope that you'll tune into the ones in the coming fiscal year, including our first one on October the 26th in just a few more months. So Sylvia and Kathy, any last comments? And we'll take it home. So.
Well, I just wanted to again thank everyone for coming or attending today's meeting, and again profusely thank the CSB team. As Steve Price said, everyone from every office within the CSB has played a role in us reaching this major milestone in the CSB's history. And I am very proud of the work that you all do, and I hope that you are proud of that work as well. And I am looking forward to completing the backlog and meeting that challenge and that goal by the end of the calendar year. So again, thank you everyone for joining us today, and we will hopefully see you in October at our next public board meeting.
Thank you. And just wanted to echo the thanks to the entire CSB team for their tremendous hard and consistent work every day. Also wanted to underscore that I think that the teams have really resulted in great collaboration and great feedback. And we have teams throughout the CSB that enrich each other and all of us through their collaboration and feedback. And really to thank the community. These investigations involve hundreds of hours, dozens, sometimes hundreds of interviews, incredible amounts of analysis, a amazing range of scientific knowledge. And so I continue to be impressed by the knowledge by our investigators, and really do commend both our reports and our videos as an opportunity to learn and to be able to improve safety. So ultimately, that's what we're here for. As we said in the beginning, we're doing these reports because terrible incidents occurred that resulted in loss of life, injury, property damage, over $200 million in industrial damage. And as a nation, it's our commitment to do better. And the CSB is a big part of that, and I'm honored to be part of this team. So thank you all very much for your important work.
All righty. Well, thank you, everyone. See you at the next meeting.
So long.